Okay, welcome to the event show live. Thank you all for joining us. A big thanks to those that are tuning in and joining the show again. We really appreciate your support for the show. And a big thanks to those that are joining in for the first time. It's really great to have everyone here with us today. The purpose of the show has very much been about bringing us together as event people and to hear from some leading thinkers from across our industry to share some of the challenges we've been going through, but certainly now really looking at the opportunities that are re-emerging and how we can make the most of those. And so today's chat is all about hearing from some people who have been doing some great work, looking at the role of technology and how that helps us plan and deliver and evaluate our events. And also especially the role it can play to make sure our participants, our fans and attendees will want to sign up and show up again. So really looking forward to hearing from our panelists today. Just before we go to them, if you haven't joined before, my name's Andrew O'Loughlin. I've been working in events for many years across major events in sport and leading a international event agency for about 10 years. But these days I'm now out helping event teams launch or rebuild their events. And we take a experience design approach to help create experiences that will hopefully ensure people want to sign up again and that they'll want to share good things about your events and want to keep showing up again and again. And we've been working lots of initiatives, including this event show. There's a podcast version of the show, which goes a lot into experience design and talking with lots of great leading people, different forums and online courses. But it's all with the goal of sharing some learnings that may help people like us get back into having the success we all deserve to be enjoying in this industry. So speaking of successful people doing great things, I'd love to introduce our panel. First up, I'd like to say hello to Alex Grant. So Alex is CEO at INTIX and he's going to talk a lot about how technology can be used to assist us in delivery of COVID-safe events. So welcome, Alex.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you on the show. Also love to welcome back Sophie Hamdorf. So many of you will know Sophie from her role as a brand and marketing advisor at Register Now. So Sophie's going to give us a perspective in terms of the role that tech platforms can play in preparing participants for our COVID safe protocols. So welcome, Sophie.
Thanks, Andy. Great to be back.
Great to have you back on. And certainly not last but least, Stephen Goss. So many of you again will know Gossy, very experienced member of the event community, as founder at Sentry and recently with Alleviate. So Goss is going to share a lot of his knowledge, especially on the way that we can use technology and software to help create COVID safe events in a COVID sensible way. So welcome, Gossy.
Thanks, Andrew, and thanks for the opportunity, man.
Great to have you on. Great to have you all on. And as I like to call out, please do feel free to drop any questions in the Q&A box or chat as we go. We want to make sure that people walk away with some things that they want to know more about and some answers, I guess, to some of the questions that we all have. So let's jump into it. Alex, I might actually go to you first and really keen to hear, obviously, a bit about the work you do at INTIX, but also, I guess, how we can be using technology, particularly in the planning phases for our events and how we get them back up and running. So yeah, love to hear your thoughts in terms of how we can be evolving technology, how that's changed, and how we can get our participants and people turning up again.
Certainly. Thanks, Andrew. I think the biggest thing when we look at it is that there is certainly technology out there to support the events. It's just a matter of, I guess, the financial viability around it as well. So you've got to weigh up what the solutions are versus what the restrictions obviously have in place that are always changing. So since March this year, it's obviously been increasing, decreasing capacities at any point. So it's all about providing technology solutions that are nimble enough to manage those requirements as they're always changing. So things around I think the biggest two terms in our industry have become patron, or for me particularly, have become patron density and contact tracing. So I'm sure everyone's heard those terms. So a lot of our events that we worked with previously, I guess, are already managing or require that information. But we also work with a lot of smaller organizations that are sort of, your local shows, your local expos, your local sports, all that sort of stuff, that all of a sudden are now required to fulfill the same obligations that I guess an AFL club is at the MCG. So providing a technology, I guess, at a price point that makes sense has been one of the biggest things that we've been working towards supporting, I guess, small events, large events, all events, in how that can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And Alex, are these new technology pieces and platforms that have been introduced, or you're more applying them in different ways given the current requirements?
I think it's more applying existing technology to the situation. A lot of the products we had around cashless solutions, around validating tickets to make sure you know how many people are in your event. A lot of those things already existed. It's just, I guess, now a lot more requirement in using them out there. So, we've been working with Square for a while now around their payment processing. We think they're one of the biggest and best in the world for those. I'm sure everyone's seen them at cafes or used them at their events for bars and things like that. Yeah. But putting it in place now, I think there's a big emphasis around those cashless solutions. You think when you go to Coles or any stores these days, you see the sign, we prefer cashless. We don't want to be handling cash. And look, there's a argument to be made that probably potentially you should have been doing it previously. I think there's big issues around cash security that you can manage just by going cashless. But this is the term everyone seems to be using is COVID's now given us a solution or an answer to say, this is why we're doing it. So it's things that they were probably wanted to do, but always felt there might have been some pushback from customers. And by using we have to do it because of COVID now, there's really no argument that I guess customers can make against that. So it's actually, in a way, it's been a good opportunity that there's a lot of things, talking, I'm sure the other guys will say the same things, pushing things that people wanted to do. There's been a lot of downtime to rejig what you've been doing. And now there's like a reason that you can push to your customers of why you're doing it. So I think the technology has always been there. It's just utilizing it now or selling it in a different way. Yeah,
it's really interesting points, Alex. And actually goes back to our last show, Todd Harris, who's the CEO at Stadiums Queensland. And we have been talking a lot with everyone about what's changed and then what will revert back to normal. And he used that example, I guess, as something that a cashless operation will be is the new norm, and cashless venues is now the norm. And I think you're right. There's some things which have been catalysts to change, which are good things, and we won't go back. And they've been a good progression. Are there other things top of mind that you think participants or fans or people attending these events are really needing prior to signing up and showing up again? Perhaps sort of before that actual event day experience, and the technology, the platforms that are playing a role in that?
Yeah, I think Sophie's going to talk about the communication piece around, I guess, expecting a COVID safe event. I think there's a large proportion of people that providing, and Goss will talk about it too, I think, about what's the best practice to provide a COVID safe event. And I guess, reassuring the customers. Look, some people are we've seen some people just want to get back out there and just want to attend events, and they don't kind of care about the word COVID. But then there's certainly a large proportion, depending on, I guess, the demographics of an event, that providing reassurance via the technology solutions and communication. I don't want to jump in front of Sophie or anything, but I think that's key about promoting that you are taking all possible steps to make it as safe as possible for them to attend.
Yeah, no, that's really good points. We'll keep coming back to you, Alex. We might bring Sophie into the discussion now. So, yeah, Sophie, I guess you're really interested in your understanding of the different platforms and their role in terms of, I guess, behind the scenes, how we can be using them, but of course, how we can be communicating with our audiences to make sure that they are ready to be coming back, and how we can do that effectively and efficiently as well.
Yeah, sure. No, thanks. It's a really vast topic of conversation, and like all these, platforms and all the technology around, because things are evolving so quickly, we really recommend that, event organizers have like one source of truth. So whether it's your website or your Facebook page, or, potentially it's your Instagram, there really needs to be one place where all the updates are being added to, because there's so much for event organizers to be organizing, essentially. So, you want to make it as easy and effective and efficient. And, to that point as well, ensuring that, the messaging is really clear, succinct and consistent, but also not definitive, because as we've seen, this situation has evolved so quickly. Things have changed. Even, how events have been run up in Queensland in September, that's evolved so much now that, you go to an event site in Queensland and it's basically like there is no COVID. People are behaving really differently. Whereas when we look to, events being run in Victoria, over the next few months, there will be a real sense of conservatism, in light of what we've gone through. So having that one source of truth with the consistent messaging for event participants is really vital. And then, again, depending on what channels organisers are using, to update, they can point to the source of truth, or if they prefer just to keep it in the one channel, that's fine. But we all know participants like to consume information in different ways. Some might like email, some might always go back to the website, some might just be on Instagram. So I think having the one place, but then point the other channels to that one place is absolutely vital. Also around all the, the different, policies in terms of COVID safe and, having those changes to, the way the data is being used, and, potentially what you might need to do, 24 hours out from an event, you might have a COVID safe checklist you need to go through to, say that you are, safe to be in the event. All those sort of things need to be on that, on your website or in your comms. That's really important. And then, I think also there's a really, huge opportunity for event organisers to get front and centre and, put some, videos together, put them out on socials or in an EDM or on your YouTube channel, wherever you may feel it's appropriate. We've kind of, Zoom has allowed for us to come into this sort of world where it's okay to, get up in front of people, and it doesn't have to be high, production value. You can just get on, do a 30-second clip, maybe get, a bit adventurous and make a reel in Instagram, and, just get in front of your participants and, be authentic and, tell them what they can expect. And I think it'll provide that comfort, and that, just adds that element of, authenticity and genuineness, for participants at this time when they might not be sure what to expect. Yeah,
that's great advice, Sophie. In terms of that, I love the I guess the principle of simplifying things and finding your one sort of source of truth. How do you select what's appropriate for you? Is it about what you're about as an event and what your audience are drawn to, and where they're going to want to, I suppose, receive their information in the right forum for them?
Yeah, well, look, I guess, Alex, pointed to before, like we already have all these technologies in place. It's not about going out and, creating a new blog or building a new website. It's about using what you have, the tools that you like to use that you know that you're comfortable with. So for instance, if you've got a great website and you're really comfortable with the CMS and, doing regular updates, I would use that. If you're an event that only has a Facebook page, then use that. Like, don't go out and try and make things more complicated. Use what you have, use the tools that you have, and just put a bit of a comms plan in place around your event so that if you have a change in a policy or if something happens and you need to update people, you know where you need to put that information. Whether if you're going from your website and you're updating across, maybe you like to update on LinkedIn or Twitter, but you know what touch points you need to hit to make sure everyone is covered. I think it's just, it's not hard to put that in place before things start getting really busy. And no one, as event organizers, it's the risk managers, right? So we just need to be able to mitigate the risk and know where to put those comms when they might, be required.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a really good place to start, isn't it? And I think, we know that there's so many options and potential costs involved in adapting, changing existing systems or upgrading or tapping into new platforms and systems. So I think it's a really great place to start with what you have and use that well. It's a really good advice. And lots to explore with you as well, Sophie. I'd love to hear from Stephen from Goss at this point. Goss, in terms of, and we were talking prior to the show, and you mentioned sort of approaching things in a COVID sensible way, and I think that that sort of pragmatic approach is pretty important right now, isn't it? But can you tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing in terms of helping organisers prepare to re-emerge and re-establish their events?
Sure, thanks, Andrew. And I suppose following on the back of some of the other comments from Sophie and Alex, event organisers are, like it or not, professional risk managers. They need to understand what their exposures are. And the piece that generally slips by is the assurance. I know Alex mentioned reassurance, but the assurance process to actually tick off that you're actually doing what you said you're going to do. Because, like it or not, we're in a fairly regulated environment, whether it's wearing seatbelts or wearing masks, we are usually dictated to by minds greater than ours. So we've got to have processes in place to actually make sure we address those concerns. And we're talking about COVID safe planning. There's a lot of actions that are going to come out of those plans that need to be accounted for. And you need ways of making sure things don't slip through the cracks. And one of those ways of doing it is through technology, whether it's through your customer-facing systems or whether it's through the compliance systems such as I've got. And fortunately enough, these systems have been developed in advance of COVID, and whilst slight tweaks have gone on, we've been able to adjust what we've got to apply to the current world. Because COVID being the topic of the day, of course, but there are many other things that we need to make sure don't slip through the cracks also. So, go back to your point about how we're helping using these systems. Having tools available to you at a moment's notice, so you can prove that you've done what you said you're going to do, is a great way of doing things. Because the event guidelines that have come out recently for Victoria, for example, probably largely based on some of the interstate stuff, but there's some requirements in there to actually, they're going to have people auditing and checking and subjecting our plans and activities to scrutiny. And to Sophie's point before about the conservatism over the next few months, regulators are going to be very conservative about their approach to events. They'll permit them to go ahead. They'll also probably come on scene and say, well, okay, show me. And some of that stuff has been in the past very difficult to locate and put your hands on, whether it's a folder full of documents or reams of plans have been printed out and sitting in folders. Again, the COVID safe principles need to apply. So that stuff needs to be available online, touchless, cloudless. The ability to circulate that information from your databases is crucial. And what started from my system to be something to do with the problem of contractor management and inductions has evolved to an entire event management portal now, where having a fairly, I suppose, comprehensive action tracking system involved, so you can assign accountabilities and check compliance. There's a big focus on training. We saw an example earlier in the year where there was a severe lack of training in a particular party. That's a fairly strong control measure that's put in place. So you've got to be able to show evidence that you've actually trained your staff, contractors on your expectations. But also, when you talk about participants, we utilised our system for a fairly large event prior to COVID, where we're able to brief 3,000 participants in a fairly high-profile event on what was expected of them whilst they were participating. So having those things available now tools where you can actually check your implementation or compliance standards with a fairly simple, online, intuitive, easy to use event-based systems.
I think, Gossie, your points about it's being ready when your events are launched to have the systems and processes in place, and also if an incident occurs, COVID related or COVID not, I guess, being able to respond to that immediately is very important, isn't it? I think, again, going back to the last show, Todd Harris from Stadiums Queensland and Lindy Murphy at the Suncorp Netball League spoke about the role of ticketing and how that's changing, I guess, in terms of in this COVID environment, that those systems need to be used in different ways, and being able to actually be ready for instances where you need to know where someone was sitting, or if it's a public event, know where someone was located, who was there, who was around them. And all these requirements are needed now, aren't they? And Todd called out making sure they had those things in place before the events commenced or were held, and testing those systems. So what's your sort of advice, I guess, in terms of having some systems ready to go and tested and proven, and then using them during that event delivery phase?
Oh, it comes back to any planning, I suppose. That preparation phase is crucial, because dealing with stuff on the fly and people not knowing what's going on is we've had times like that in the past. When you talk about the preparation side of things, so long as everyone's aware of the operating environment and what's expected of them, and to take your point, Sophie mentioned before about videos being placed on platforms, well, taking that same video and putting it into let's call it the e-learning platform that gets sent out to contractor suppliers, etc. So everyone knows how to report or take action through the systems you've got available. Because no one likes surprises in the event space. You talk about the regulatory stuff, we now got to report to WorkSafe, positive COVID-19 tests. Those sort of things, having systems available that can be done seamlessly on a smart device in the field, they're the crucial aspects of it. And so that everyone knows how it works, and keep it simple. Because some of these systems that I've seen in play before, designed for construction industry, which is great for that sort of environment, but to try and get someone to learn those systems in a short space of time is very complex. So when you talk, and again, it comes back, everything we do is always subject to scrutiny, because working back from the worst case scenario when something does occur, whether it's as simple as a positive COVID-19, well, I say simple, but a positive COVID-19 test, through to something a bit more catastrophic, your processes are going to be subject to scrutiny over time. And we've all been involved with events where things have gone a bit awry, and that's just human nature. We've got to bring those back under control as quickly as possible. So having those systems and processes in place to quickly respond and bring it back to normal are just crucial.
Well, you're absolutely right. I think we all absolutely know that some things will happen and something will go wrong, something unexpected will happen. We can't be egotistical enough to expect that we can control everything. And I think we know that working in events, that incidences will occur. And we need to be ready for them and be able to work with them as they arise. Alex, I might just come back to you in terms of, I guess, something around some of these points of the use of technology and platforms to manage those the delivery of events. And Goss just mentioned then, I suppose, using platforms from other industries, but then adapting them for application within events. What's your experience around that?
Yeah, so I guess one of the biggest things we've seen is SMS communication. So there's been a lot of talk around previously how successful SMS marketing is, I guess, compared to email. So obviously there's a cost differential here, but then there's also recorded higher success rates. And so we've been working with a company here in Melbourne around I guess developing, back to Gossie's point around developing your plan, and in this particular instances, what would happen if there was a positive COVID case at your event, how you then communicate that. And as we've seen with any outbreaks across anywhere in Australia, like A, they happen, and B, it's how we then respond. Every second, minute is crucial. So I think one of the biggest things is that we've been working with our organisers is, okay, what's that step we can assist government with? So I think there's an established baseline of, okay, if you're running an event, you need to be able to provide a list of attendees or entrants and their contact details at a minimum. I think it's postcode, email, and phone number. So what we've done with eSendX is essentially, okay, you have to get sign off of this COVID plan or this plan for your event. Part of that can be inclusive of a message. And so via the platform, as Gossi said, getting that message out there as soon as possible, that you're on your phone, you've just been told, hey, you've had a COVID test, someone attended your event, or someone ran in your event or participated in your event. Your COVID plan and sticking to your COVID plan is, okay, we'll actually be that first touch point to everyone we know of. So within 5 seconds of being notified, you can send out a pre-approved SMS of what that message says to all your participants or to all your entrants. And I think at last count, SMS is something around 95% open rate within 7 minutes, whereas email, it can take days for maybe 10% if you're in like the upper echelon of email delivery. So providing that, and once again back to my original point around the assurances, or Gossi as assurances rather than reassurances, is that, okay, letting your customers know, hey, we've got this plan that if someone, whilst we're saying please don't attend if you're showing any symptoms of being sick, look, we've seen instances around Australia where you don't actually show any symptoms, and therefore there's a potential that a positive case could attend, and it's how you respond to that. So using those technologies, once again, that have kind of already existed in terms of SMS marketing, sort of tweaking them slightly to fulfill a function that you're going to need going forward. So that's been one of the, I guess, it's an existing technology that we haven't even really tweaked it, because you're still sending to your participants. It's just what the contents of that message is.
It's a really good example, I think, Alex. I think it's, I like your points around, I guess, understanding what it is that you need to achieve or have in place for yourself or stakeholders, authorities, etc. I think that's a very good place to start, isn't it? And then having the systems in place to achieve that, and perhaps some of the systems you already have are suitable, so it's using them in new and different ways. So what's some of the sort of the thought process that or analysis that you might go through in terms of looking at the cost versus benefit of some of these systems and platforms, and whether you can use an existing system or something new is required? We all know there's the next shiny toy that we can all use, but what's some of the sort of the checkpoints that you might go through to work out what you should be doing?
I think it's just viability of the financial plan. Obviously with restrictions in place previously, where you could have 50,000 people attending a music festival, at the moment you can only have 5,000, I think, in New South Wales, or that's regional New South Wales. So knowing that your income is also coming down, most likely, unless you raise your ticket prices, so it's all a balancing act. You're going to have to study, I guess, your financial plans. I think there's, we heard when this first started, you can go out and I guess get beacon technology that tracks every participant within your music festival space. It's viable. That, as I said originally, there's technology out there, but the cost of some of these things is quite expensive to implement, which I think is, talking to a lot of our organisers, it's the commercial viability of running these events currently with the restrictions on crowds and participants. So we've worked really hard, I guess, on using existing technology. So, and look, it's not just us. I know in the ticketing space, least 3 or 4 of the top providers in Australia all have a similar function of using your phone. Now, everyone has a smartphone. Well, majority of people have a smartphone these days in terms of scanning tickets in. So providing an app that can scan in. And look, as I said, these are technologies that have probably been around for 3 or 4 years, but all of a sudden people are having to use them now. And you know, it's the technology is out there, but it's providing a solution at a price point without going over the top to get that balance right.
No, well, I think that's really good advice. As you say, I think resources will be limited for some time, and we always, no matter what, need to be applying those resources in the best possible areas to maximise the best possible benefits. So yeah, really good advice. And Sophie, I guess again, love to hear your thoughts in terms of some of the things that Gossi and Alex have raised in terms of the ways that we can use different platforms and how to best maximise what we currently have, or are there other things that we need to be putting into place?
Yeah, look, no, I absolutely agree with what the guys have said, and you know, for us at Register Now, you know, we've adapted, and you know, we are an online registration platform, so it is completely online and cashless. But clients of ours, you know, in the past would sort of do all the manual allocation of race numbers and whatnot, and we do have the facility to do auto allocation, so that's really sped up that sort of process, and sending out e-tickets so that when, you know, participants are coming to event site on the day, they can do a really, you know, smooth, you know, socially distanced race pack pickup, or, you know, potentially they have it, you know, prior to the event day as well. But we're also finding with organisers, they've been adding additional forms to their events so that they can do their QR code check-in. And, you know, what we've seen is there's more success when they send it out 24 hours prior to the event, so that people can check in, do their COVID safe check before they, you know, arrive at the event site. Because if you're trying to do it when you're trying to get into an event site and you've got, you know, potentially you've got your bike to put into transition, and, you know, it can be really hectic. And already to get the wristband or whatever the checkoff is to get into the event site, you've got to pull out your receipt to show that, you know, you've done your, you know, your COVID safe survey. So just, you know, streamlining those processes has been, you know, quite helpful, and it's really important to make it as easy as possible for people who potentially may not have had to have, you know, used their phone on site in an event, or, you know, age categories that potentially aren't, you know, super handy with their smartphones, because we do cater for, you know, many age groups in our events. So yeah, those elements, and then yeah, absolutely having a comms plan in place. I mean, I can't imagine many, you know, to get approval for a COVID safe event, you know, across Australia and New Zealand, you'd have to have, you know, a crisis management plan, you know, for your comms, you know, in the event that there is a COVID, you know, positive test. So yeah, I think SMS really, you know, really instant, and, you know, like Alex said, you know, open rates on SMSs are, you know, pretty high compared to, I mean, yeah, 10 to 20% on an email, and it's just not instant. You don't know if it's going to go into someone's junk or, you know, a different folder. So yeah, I absolutely agree with using that technology as well. Most event organisers, you know, have had some familiarity with those platforms. Like there's, you know, particularly after the bushfires and whatnot, most people are sort of quite attuned to, you know, having to respond quickly to their participants. So I think, you know, it's not an unknown area, but yeah, the cost is always going to be an issue as well.
Yeah, and there's sort of the realities of the current environment, isn't there? And I guess a lot of what we're talking about is making people's lives easier, both I guess within our audiences, the participants and fans, etc., that are showing up, but also behind the scenes, making our lives easier and using technology to achieve what we need to, but as effectively and efficiently as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I mean, just to that point, you know, there's a lot of data flying around at the moment. I think we also need to just, you know, organisers need to remember that they need to just go back and check their, you know, event waivers, their terms and conditions, and ensure that, you know, there's a COVID line about, you know, if something does happen, you know, your data may be passed on to, you know, health authorities and whatnot, because I think, you know, there's I think with all these COVID tracing apps, everyone's starting to question, well, where's my data going? What's happening? Can I be sure that it's not going to be used? So just to, check those parts of the policies and terms and conditions is really important for organisers.
Yeah, definitely. Are you capturing, you mentioned that there's some added elements that you're adding into the process and perhaps some extra data capture or information sharing. Is there a lot being added, or is it simply more just adding in a few additional sort of layers to that process?
Yeah, so look, it depends how our clients like to use it. But for instance, as part of, the Queensland Triathlon, for example, up in Queensland earlier in September, I believe it was, they had a situation where they, to be able to enter the event site, you had to either scan this QR code or, have done it from your email that was sent via Register Now. And it just basically was using one of our registration forms, but we have, the ability to use QR codes and they're in all our e-tickets as well. And it just makes it really, like, as you probably, most people would know, when you go to a cafe and you just check in and it's really quick and, then you just put in your details. So, I mean, it's not new, but it is just something that we have evolved to make it more efficient for not just participants, but spectators as well, because spectators typically don't register for an event because they haven't been required, but they do need to now show that, they're on site just as part of the contact tracing. Requirement.
Yeah. And Gossie, in terms of evolving processes, I know you've been a very strong sort of advocate or a leader in terms of trying to make our lives easier behind the scenes in the ways that we work, and from inducting workforce and knowledge sharing and capturing information and communicating and things. So can you tell us about some of the things that you've found particularly useful, whether systems or platforms, in terms of making life easier behind the scenes in recent times?
Sure. I suppose we love an acronym, but I've called it Alleviate for a reason, because I've known over the years the complexities that get introduced and the time-consuming nature of some of this stuff too, because we all operate in a fairly time-critical environment. So we need things that are very flexible on the fly, so that our event organisers don't get held up with sort of cumbersome bureaucracy anymore. And I think having these processes, and I think all three of our systems here we're talking about today are probably complementary to one another. And I think you pick up these opportunities. But I operate quite a lot behind the scenes, I suppose, when you talk about the boring end of compliance. But just touching back on the cost factor, one of the things that I've noticed with my customers is that they are prepared, because of the, I suppose, the degrees of comfort they get. It's like taking out an insurance policy, degrees of comfort, and also the time they get back from having some of these efficiencies in place, and being able to, one client that actually was able to reallocate 2 full-time staff members. So there's some fairly good benefits. So rather than it's easy to look at the bottom line and say it's a significant cost, but there are other huge beneficials. Plus that assurance I said before about being able to produce information gives you a comfort level that you don't have to lose sleep and concentrate on the minutiae of some of these things. You can tell at a glance through a dashboard view what your standards are. There's some fairly strong legislative principles that govern what we do, and using best endeavours approach, and also being able to satisfy the what's as low as reasonably practicable criteria. So some of those, whilst that's a bit of academia, it's quite often lost on event organisers how far they need to go with some of this approach as well. So there's some fairly simple ways of actually addressing those concerns. Having a bit of a background in that regulatory environment and doing a lot of instant investigations, you also know what the regulators are going to be looking for. So I think the systems we've got available and the communication methods are fairly crucial to get that information out to people as well, and be able to satisfy your obligations as duty holders.
And I guess without going into systems or products and things too much, what does that look like within an event in terms of when what sort of best practice, I guess, in terms of in real life and real time? Have you got some, I suppose, examples of this way of working well?
Well, the way I put it is that event organisers need to know what the hot buttons are. They don't need to know all the detail, providing that's being addressed, but the things that are likely to creep up and bite them, things that haven't been addressed in time, you need some simple tools that you can visually see, well, okay, what do I need to concentrate on next? Or what do I need to delegate or follow up immediately? So rather than having to go, where's my list in my folder, and what hasn't been done, or it has been done but no one's told me. So all that sort of stuff now can be done quite simply digitally without, and visible. If they're walking around with a smartphone, they can check straight away, or add additional, because we all spot issues as we're walking around, whether it's pre-event in the bump in or the actual operation phase. You go, I just need to track this thing, whatever it is. I won't go into details, but any issues that arise, if they're a fairly significant priority, you want to know that it's not going to slip through the crack. So because a lot of this pre-stuff done, let's call it the boring end of the compliance spectrum, gets done well before the event, so you can address that. In real time, when your time is critical and you're being pulled from pillar to post as an event manager, you need to know that the things that are going to be probably problematic over time.
That's right, Gossi. And I guess at an individual level for ourselves, we need to know what's going on and need to know what we need to know. But also in some of the projects I've worked with you on, it's certainly highlighted the needs for other people and to be aware of what's going on. And most of our events involve many people, and often in dispersed locations, and I guess having everyone on the same page or on the same system and with the same information, that's critical, isn't it?
And the current operating picture, that you talk about, by providing visibility to other stakeholders, whether they be on-site or remote, whether they be, for example, emergency services or a stakeholder that needs to know what's going on, you quite simply give them access to view this stuff in real time, if you've a mind to. So, we've all dealt with the difficulties of like logging in real time, whether it's a piece of paper on a desk through to a spreadsheet through to something a bit more advanced. Those sort of systems now are advanced to the point where sharing that information in real time gives people comfort, because most of these stakeholders look at event organisers and there's degrees of opinion, I suppose. Either you're at the low end of the spectrum where they think you can't handle it, or you're very proficient. So the whole idea is to give them comfort levels so they know that you've got everything covered from an event organiser perspective, and you are addressing concerns as they arise, because that's generally the nervousness, I suppose, from some of these stakeholders who've approved an event. And Andrew, we can go back and talk about one particular example where there was a degree of nervousness from the external stakeholders, but we're able to allay that. So that's that complete operating picture in real time is crucial.
That's right. And look, I think we all know technology is a great enabler, isn't it? And I guess a fair bit of today we're talking about naturally sort of mitigating risk and compliance and all that boring stuff, as you said, Gossi, not me.
I sell it.
And look, I think that's sort of the context or the mindset that we're currently in. But there's a lot of cool initiatives and systems and platforms which we all know exist and can be embraced as well, isn't there? And I guess I'd love to get some of your thoughts, all of you, in terms of some of the positive opportunities which or have emerged or were even around pre-COVID that we could be potentially embracing, whether that's platforms and systems or even just the mindset towards technology. Alex, have you got examples, I guess, of things that you think we should be looking towards to some of the cooler initiatives which are going on across the industry?
Yeah, I think cashless. I think it's something that if I look at Square, they've been pushing at events for probably a couple of years now, just to improve processes and those things around. You probably want to trust 100% of your staff, but when you're running a 50,000 music festival or a 20,000 participant event where you've got a merch area, the ability to micromanage the cash handling is exposed a little bit. And I think that's certainly been an area that has been pushed for different reasons, but now has become a place or a function that with COVID happening is now definitely an area that people are more aware of. And even to Goss's point, access to information. So, you know, if you're the event organizer walking around your site, just being able to check on your phone how many people are in my event. There's always an interesting discussion that I always have with people about the reported number of people that are at an event is definitely different to, what's said to the media is not always what is there for a number of reasons. But if you're the event operator, just knowing how many people, like you don't have to call someone at your ops center, or you don't have to call someone at the front gate who's managing entry to find out how many people are there. Just using those technologies to look at and access that information immediately, rather than going through a chain of people to get back to you to then report to someone else. So I think they're probably two things that existed prior and were probably being pushed, but COVID has definitely given it a step up to push forward with those technologies.
Mm. Alex, I'm interested in your view in terms of how progressive or innovative you feel the event industry is compared to other industries, and in terms of, always sort of interested in this question of where events sits on the spectrum, if you like, of you know, are we leading the way, are we lagging behind, and of course there'll be different answers for different parts of the industry and different things that we're doing. But what's your sort of general view on terms of how receptive we are to innovation and change?
Oh, look, certainly I think there's a lot of people that want to do this stuff. We've been working with quite a few organizations around, you know, them coming up with ideas to us and how, not necessarily coming up with a solution, but presenting a problem, and how can you then use the I think Sophie talked about it and Gossi's talked about it, looking at those problems that appear and then approaching different platforms and providers that you're already using about how you can solve them. So I think it's definitely a very, in my opinion, a lot of the people we work with are quite progressive. I don't know if that's a reflection because we're trying to push the envelope and people are approaching us because we're trying to push the envelope. But I think everyone we work with is definitely at the forefront. You know, and I've worked with a number of events, I guess, that Register Now supply, and also with Gossy, and I think all of those events are also trying to be very progressive in what they provide as solutions. And having used all of the platforms that I guess everyone's on here, and knowing that there's probably, you know, a lot of providers out there that are very similar, I guess, to what we all provide. It's not necessarily about you know, pushing the products that we supply, but there are certainly platforms that provide similar stuff. And I think it's about talking to your suppliers and discussing the problems that you're having and getting them to, you know, that's why you hire them in a way. Like, let's get them providing solutions to my problems. It doesn't always have to be, I need to solve it myself, because, you know, I think all three of us work with a wide range of organizations that if you approach us and say, hey, we're having this problem, that we can turn around and say, oh, well, you know, the Waffle Grand Final had that exact problem and this is the solution we provided for them. Would that work for you? And so it's I think, rather than, I guess, bottling it up and trying to solve it by yourself, reach out to your suppliers that you already have and solve it that way as well.
Mm. It's really good to hear that, Alex. I think people obviously want to work with people that are solutions focused and not necessarily just about a particular tool or product that you're trying to sell to them. And I think, you know, certainly in my experience running an agency, and the clients, if you play the long term, the bigger picture game with them, they're going to want to work with you for longer, aren't they? And I think it's so some of the examples you're talking about is taking ideas, platforms, systems from other industries, if you like, and then using them within events to improve the systems and the experiences that we're providing?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, there's certainly communication tools out there. I think some of the biggest providers in our space are the ones that offer, in an IT sense, those API facilities. So how easy is it for other platforms that provide a specific solution at a price point that works for that person to talk to other platforms? And I think that's not just events, that's any industry. The ability to own your data. I think that's the other key part about, who can access what data and how important that data is. I think everyone is learning these days about the importance of who owns that data and how they can access it, which goes to Sophie's point around communicating to those people. Like, if you can't, I guess, communicate to the people you need to, then how are you going to get the right message across, and what's that channel to do that? So and with Gossy as well, it's pushing that message about managing the risk.
Yeah, that's great. Sophie, what's your view in terms of how we're embracing new ways of doing things, or new tools and technologies? Do you think we're doing enough? Can we be giving ourselves a bit of a kick along, or how are we tracking?
Oh, look, I think naturally event organisers, I mean, they don't have these sort of, bricks and mortar, style businesses. They're running these sort of fluid, ever-evolving experiences. And so I think, most clients that we work with tend to be, you have some super conservative ones, but most are really open, and look to new innovations. And we try at Register now, particularly to be, give all the options. And to Alex's point, we are solution providers. Like, yes, we're a registration provider, but if you need this data to go into this CRM to help you down the line, we'll make it happen. We're not API driven yet. We do have some APIs that work with our system, but we're very good at working with Zapier, and we're just, we love data. And, I think, it is really about that creative problem solving, whether it is, helping to communicate, or if it's helping to, talk to our clients' other, suppliers, whether they be a merchandise or, their timing provider. We've always been really, fluid in that sort of sense. But it's been great to see, through all this, so many event organisers being really honest about what's happening. I think there's been this requirement for transparency, and I think because of that, this sort of next, I guess the next season ahead, or the post-COVID time, I think there'll be a lot of clients affected, but there'll be a lot of event organisers that are still around that have now got this really incredible two-way communication channel with their participants. And I think the people that participate in the events going forward are going to really notice that, and it's going to be this incredible next level of engagement, because like we've all seen, like we've all been in each other's living rooms through Zoom and through social media, and even just through email updates. I think there's been a lot more transparency, and I think it's shown the real human side of all of us and what we do. And for event organisers, not many are in it just for the profit. They're in it because their heart and soul are in it. And I think this is all it's given a good gateway to that. So it's going to be really interesting, the next frontier of events. But we're all really excited about it, and what it can bring in terms of authenticity as well.
Yeah, it's a great message, Sophie. I think it's an exciting time, isn't it? As much as there's challenges currently and ahead, I think you're quite right. I think we can use this as a way to, and I do personally think that event people are very progressive and innovative. We've got limited resources and time, and usually open to improving things. As you said, the experiences we provide are ever evolving, and we receive real-time feedback. We're very much testing and learning and constantly. So I think we do that, but there's also the realities of capability and things, isn't there? I think it's a great point that there's some exciting opportunities coming up. And actually, I guess on that note, we're coming towards the end of the hour. So Gossy, I might come to you in terms of final thoughts or future priorities for you or our industry, and things that you think that we should have top of mind as we walk away today.
Sure. I'll probably just cap off what the topic we've just covered off about solutions, I suppose. When you look in the room here, we've got 4 event professionals who've got a lot of event experience, generally know what event people need. And when you think about, we've always needed to sell tickets, we've always needed to register participants, we've always needed to address our compliance obligations. So having people in the industry who know what's needed and know the pressures that the event organisers are under, whether it's cost, time, or resources, it's good that we've got people providing innovative solutions. We're not providing new thoughts. We're just providing new processes and new ways of doing things. So I think into the future there'll be more efficiencies required, because people coming out of this slumber of COVID will be looking at cost efficiencies, savings across the board, because they might not have the resources anymore or the skills. So being able to be there and provide adaptive solutions. I know, even over the last couple of years, I've had clients come to us and say, well, a bit like Alex's point, well, I've got this particular problem I'm trying to deal with. And we'll go away and have a think about it. I'm fortunate enough, I probably 3 years ago, I employed my own software engineer. So I just tell him what's needed and he just works the magic. And that's just the benefit of having smart people around you as well, because we cross paths with Sophie's team and Alex's team as well. And we can just bounce ideas off each other, because whilst there's probably some crossover at some points. Someone wise person told me once, it's a bit like a Venn diagram. There's small crossover points, but generally we operate in bespoke industries. So, but just being there to provide those solutions for the event environment going forward is going to be crucial.
I think it's a really good point, Gossie, about the knowledge and experience that you have as event people, and I guess that's got immense value, and that can be applied in our work, but also taking knowledge from other areas, other fields, and translating that into a way that's meaningful and useful for us in our work as event people as well. I think both those approaches are extremely valuable, and will help us deliver safe and satisfying events again. So I think it's a really, really great point. Sophie, your sort of final thoughts or things that we should perhaps be thinking of as we get back into these events re-emerging?
I think one thing we have really noticed, and thanks to the event show, and there's a lot of other sort of bridging people out there, is that we've all learned to sort of break down being in these different silos, as Steve was just talking about. And I think continuing that collaboration and that sharing of ideas, even if we're not in exactly the same sort of fields, we're all trying to do the same thing. I think maintaining that and staying in touch and keeping these relationships going forward is going to be vital, because whatever Alex is doing, that might help us, and vice versa. And I think we've got to just remember that we're all in our own lanes. We're doing our own thing, and collaboration is key. And we've always thought that about the industry, but we've really seen it in practice this year. So I'd love to see that continue, post-COVID or COVID normal.
Yeah, it's a great call out, isn't it? I think a lot of us are mindful at the moment of as life starts to get back to normal, and for some people it's more so than others, but that we bring or retain those good things which have happened in terms of in our lives and our working lives. I think it's a good point. Let's keep some momentum with a lot of the good things which have been happening. So very good call out. Alex, for you, final thoughts or priorities for us all?
Yeah, I think exactly on Sophie's point. I remember a quote where, I think the AFL is one of the best at this with sharing ideas, is that someone who is a member at Collingwood is very unlikely to be a member at Carlton, for example. So people that attend a running event are not necessarily the same people that are going to be attending a heavy metal music concert. So I think the ability, as Sophie said, to collaborate and work with other people in your industry to learn ideas. And one of the biggest things, I think, is seeing other solutions in place. So once you go to an event as an organizer, I think you look at those events differently than what a customer would. And you see something and you go, that'd be good if I implemented that at my event. And then as I said, or as we've all said, reaching out to your current suppliers that you're already paying for or are already your suppliers, and saying, well, I noticed this at this event, how can we make that happen? and that's just a collaboration piece. And even reaching out to that event, I think being able to have that network is also going to be crucial going forward.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, really, really great points. And we're coming to the end of our time, so really appreciate you sharing some of that knowledge that you've all got, that lived experience in the event world, and there's so much of it, and your openness to share that, and I'm sure you'll keep doing that with whomever you're working with. So thank you very much. Thanks everyone for tuning in today. Really appreciate everyone joining us again. But thanks to Alex, thanks to Sophie, and thanks to Gossi. This is the final show that we'll have this year. Really enjoyed the journey, if you like, the experience of bringing so many of us together. Please stay in touch, subscribe to the show. We'll be back next year. There's a podcast version as well, which dives deeper into some of the things that we talk about. So please keep in touch. There's lots of information and resources on my website and on experiencedesign.global. We've launched some of these other forums, online courses that hopefully are helping people and potentially help you design and redesign your event experiences and have that success that we all deserve. So thanks again for everyone for tuning in, and thanks again, Alex, Sophie, and Gossi. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.
Andrew.
Thanks, everyone. All right, we'll see you again next time. Thanks very much.